Hello, this is Uncle Jim, and this video is for James. I'm gonna butcher your name. Puh. Anyway, it's James Pugh. All right. So anyway, this video is to help him troubleshoot some 300 blackout issues, and one of them's going to be a huge help. This thing right here. But first, let's cover the AR because your buffer plunger popped out. And that's probably because your buffer tube wasn't clocked just right. So you got your castle nut and your tube, and you time this just so. And I picked out a clean AR for you, so you can see. All right, you want that buffer tube to ride right up all the way on the shoulder there. All right, so it can't pop out on its own. And then you want to make sure it holds that buffer pretty square, and you can get the buffer in and out. So just clock this and get it right. You could probably use the same part, unless your part is really wacky and has no shoulder. I don't see why you can't use the same part. Just straighten out your spring. All it's doing is holding that there, okay? Just make sure the shoulder, I wonder if I'm gonna have to focus. That shoulder is right on the end of that buffer tube. It can't go anywhere, all right? Unless you got a really wacky part. All right, so time that. All right, so this is going to be your best friend, and it's going to solve a ton of problems. A case gauge. And the reason is the 300 blackout has kind of a small shoulder, and when you're sizing brass, you can get variances. And so what you need is a case gauge, not a chamber checker, a gauge that shows you your minimum and maximum at both ends. And I believe the Hornady won't even show you this end. You want, like this is a Lyman or an L.E. Wilson, one of the two. Get one of those. That's a Lyman. And it's going to show your min and max, and then you can look out the other side before you load, and then after you load around, it's going to tell you if it's sticky or not, and if the mouth is too far. So this is your best friend. Yeah, you're gonna have to pay 20 bucks, get whatever's on sale. L.E. Wilson, Lyman, one that you can see both ends of the shell, and I'll show you right here. So, oops, wrong end. All right, put your brass in. And you have a min and max distance here, and it has to stay right within that, okay? Otherwise, you might get a light strike, you might get overpressure, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then you check your other end if it's in the min and max on this side. So you want one that shows both sides like that and has this on each side. And then you want it to drop out on its own. Now, when you're sizing brass, you're lubing it, so you want to get the lube off so you don't gunk up your gauge and keep your gauge clean, okay? Now, once you got that figured out, I don't know what dies you're using. If you're using Lee dies and it works okay in your AR, we're just talking AR right now, that's fine. If you have multiple ARs, and sometimes your brass isn't cooperating with your chambers, and that's happened to me, you go to a small base die set, okay? And what that does is just shrinks her down a little bit so it'll fit all chambers, okay? A lot less problems there. This is going to solve major problems for you. I don't know if you're making your brass or you found it at the range. Who knows who made this brass? You know what I mean? Here is a factory, well, store-bought round. Check this out. It's below the minimum. Look at that. It went past the minimum. That's no good. That's bad. So you don't trust your factory stuff either. Okay, but it drops out okay on this end. Probably because it's jacketed. which is easier. Okay, now rim thickness, especially if you make your own brass, is going to be all over the place. And if your thickness, say you're cutting and making your own, LC is a good one to pretty much trust. It's easy. It's also nice to use the same brass because there's going to be differences. And part of that is when you load your round, make a dummy because you want to chamber that in your rifle and make sure you're not touching the lands, okay? Because that's going to cause other issues. And if your brass is wrong, that's shoved way up in there and you might have issues. Okay. So now you make it around, whether it's a dummy or not, and you want it to be between min and max. I'm out of focus. And then see how this one, I picked this one out. It's a little sticky. It's not dropping out on its own. And the reason is, once the bullet's in there, this is fatter because this brass is a little thick, okay? I went to neck turning, but you don't need to. Let's keep it simple. So this gauge is going to tell you everything. If you can have some that only go to there, and you know something's wrong, and you don't want to put that in your gun, your gauge is going to tell you everything. So you check your brass before when you make a whole batch and size them. And then after, when you have a bullet in there, if your bullet's a little fat or your brass is a little fat, it might get a little sticky and not fall out. Now this one's that one's acceptable, but I've had some where they're just super sticky and it's like, ah, geez. So this is going to save you huge. Go spend the 20 bucks, whatever they are, get one on sale. All right. Now, powders. I'll just show you my favorites. You've been using Little Gun. That's not my favorite. And we discussed this last night. Some people like it, some people don't. I think 3/4 don't. I don't have problems with it. However, I have other powders that shoot better than that does. So why bother with its persnickety type deal? That's a terrible word. So my favorite powders for ARs is 1680. CFE black, you can't screw up. I mean, it's just so easy to use. So these two are very close to each other. And this is for mid to really heavy bullets. And then my favorites on the lighter bullets is, and these are basically the same, 296 and H110. Depending on lots and stuff, this is older 296, and for some reason it shoots better than this. It's a anomaly. It's an enigma. But anyway, they're basically the same powder. So for like a 110 all the way up to 160 grain, whatever, these work great. And then you start hitting this threshold with the heaviers, and those work great, but there's room in between. Little gun, I never got to shoot like a tech driver. That's a whole discussion on itself. So if you can find these powders, definitely get those. And there's lots more, but these are like my go-tos. And this is my favorite for heavy. These are my favorite for light, no doubt. And okay, all of them right here. Exclude that one. All right, so I think some of your problems were, oh, here's another gauge. Okay, this is a Sheraton gauge, so it shows you everything. However, it's super expensive, and the only reason I bought it was 5.7 is a scary little pistol round to load for, rifle round. And it shows you everything that's going on. So see where your shoulder is. If your shoulder is too far back or forward, you're going to have issues in your rifle. And that's why the gauge is key, because this is telling you where where your shoulder's hitting and stopping. And then if you're flush on this side, and if you're in between on this side. I think that's going to solve a ton of your problems. And then you're going to find out what brass you have that's really thick with your lead bullets. And unless you turn them, that's going to be fun. But you can save them for jacketed. Jacketed usually is skinnier and you get away with it, especially little 110s or like this, like a 120 something. That's pretty easy. Same with touching your lands and your barrels. You plunk test everything, especially your lead. I know this is crappy, but I think you might really solve a lot of problems with this alone. Okay, and that should fall out on its own, and it's going to tell you so much. Why is it sticky? Why is it going too far forward? Why is it too far back? I got to readjust my die when I size it. Or if you're making it, you really need one of these. Okay, another helpful item is your crimp. This is a Lee Collet crimp. See the slits? And it squeezes evenly around when you're crimping. And that is nice to have, okay? So, really love that. Now, I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff. Now, don't over crimp. Just crimp enough to where your bullet doesn't sit back when it's feeding in a semi-auto. Okay, don't over crimp. And you just want to take, if you're flaring, take the lip off of the flare there and make sure you don't get bullet setback, which means when it's feeding and hitting the feed ramp, it, gets smaller and causes pressure, and then you get a flat primer and all that stuff. The flat primers can be as simple as the neck on your brass or how it was sized. Okay, I'm sure I left out a ton, but luckily we got good guys in the side that can reply to this video or your video. So guys, go over there and help them out. It's early in the morning. I've probably missed a ton, but those are your basics, and your best friend is right here. All right. Case gauge, not a chamber checker, where you can check both ends, min and max. See the little grooves? All right, we covered that a million times. All righty. Anyway, hope this helps you somehow, and thanks for watching.